All right. So last class, we finished up the passenger section and we started on the connector piece. So here's my connector piece. I started with this sketch. I want to go into this sketch. Okay. We have not finished it, but we've kind of done, like, for lack of a better term, the overall shape. As some of you may recall, I basically made this like rectangle or square over here, and then either through constraint or through the mirror tool, I made this other side so that it's the same. Okay. The thing I'm going to do next is I'm going to put some fillets on here to round this all out. So I'm going to just use my calipers and I'm going to just ballpark the radius of these fillets. And I'm thinking the outer ones, like, I don't know, 2.5. Okay? I'm going to go with 2.5 for the outer one. So I'm going to click on this fillet thing right here, sketch fillet. And I'm going to do the 4 corners. We got 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I'm going to click
Add sketch fillet.
2.5.
Fantastic.
Ooh, that's unfortunate. So one thing you may notice is that I did this beautiful sketch. Hold up, watch. Everything is what color? What color are all these lines? So it's fully constrained. That's what that means. Black means fully constrained. I add the fillets, and suddenly things start to break down. And if you actually try to grab some of these blue things, you can see, oh, Lord have mercy. So one of the downsides about drawing rectangles and then adding fillets is sometimes constraints that were tied to the edges of those rectangles break down or disappear once you add fillets. So I mentioned this or alluded to this earlier, that sometimes it's easier to add the curves in the sketch, and sometimes it's easier to add the curves to the three-dimensional feature. And in this case, I think it's safe to say that it's probably easier to add the curves to the three-dimensional feature.
Oh.
An alternative is you do your fillets before you do your constraints or dimensions. But I'm not really a fan of that. So even though this is really not actually like done, I'm going to finish it. And I'm going to just straight up extrude. And we'll actually come back and do the fillets as features. Okay. So I have this shape. I'm going to then extrude it. It says faces and sketch regions to extrude. Since there are 3 separate enclosed shapes, I had to click to select all 3 of them. And then I'm going to use my calipers to measure the height. $10.4. What I got. So I have done my extrusion now. I'm going to call this the bottom half. This is the half that has the rectangular hole in it.
Yeah.
Or maybe call it larger half, because it is a little bit wider or fatter than the other half.
Oh, what?
And I got to do fillets now. I already measured the size. I said it was 2.5. That's what I'm going with. So I'm going to do the fillet feature. All right, fillet feature, and the radius, I'm going to type 2.5. And when you do the fillet feature, you select edges. So I'm going to hover over this edge. So I got, oh, that's not what I wanted. You got 1 edge there, 2 edge there, 3 edge, 4 edge. So I have used the fillet feature to get those rounds, as opposed to doing it in the sketch. So there's pros and cons each. One of the advantages of doing the sketch is that you don't have to have as many features. But as you found, when we did it in the sketch, it kind of destroyed the constraints. So you either have to do the constraints after the fillets, or you have to use the feature, which is, I don't really like doing constraints and dimensions to corners that don't exist. When you do those fillets, it basically destroys the corners of the rectangle. So you're like dimensioning these points off in space. So I prefer not to do that. If you look very astutely, you'll notice there's a little bit of rounding on the inside. And it's not quite the same size. Looks to be in the order of maybe only like 1.5 or 2. I'm going to go 1.5. So I'm going to do another set of fillets. And these I'm going to put at 1.5. And I'm going to do these corners. You can select crevices that are like in there like that, and we'll fillet that. Technically, that fillet adds materials. And so I have rounded all the aspects of my shape. So my shape is beautiful. Beautiful just like me. I'm going to rename these. So these were the larger fillets on the outside. So I'll call these larger half outer fillets. Because they were applied to what I've called the larger half. And those were the outside ones. And this will be the larger half inner fillets. These are the fillets that are like on the inside. These here. We have questions?
No.
Okay, well, now it's time to draw the outline for the profile. I'm going to do the top half. So this would be the part that's a little bit smaller and that actually like fits into the passenger section with like the shapes. So I got 2 squares. Some of you had diamonds. Some of you had, I think there was like triangles, circles, ovals, depending on the car. So I'm going to do that next. So I'm going to click sketch. And I'm going to sketch on this surface right here. And I am going to make a very similar shape. It's not going to be identical, but it is similar. So what you could do is you could use a center point rectangle.
Okay.
You good, man?
Okay.
No.
That's the reason I wasn't here yesterday. It's just got connected in there again.
Oh yeah.
I was probably saying that we could skip it.
I told him I was sick. Wait, when did he say that?
Didn't you tell Templeton that you're just gonna skip today?
Templeton, did I say I was gonna skip?
Did you?
Yes.
I might have said I was gonna go take a shit. Maybe that's.
Why are you cussing?
It's not. It's not. So that doesn't.
So there's different ways you can draw this. One thing I want to point out is that this center part, I do want to have centered about the origin. And then I do want to draw another center point rectangle. That center is along the same horizontal line as the origin. I'm going to deliberately draw without any other constraints, though. I'm going to show you kind of what we want to do here.
Hey Templeton, did we do the puzzle cube or the cat first?
We did the puzzle.
We did the cat and the puzzle cube in this class.
Which one did we do first?
The cat.
Which one's in the grade book?
Both. No, I lied. The cat.
All right.
The cat.
You gave me a 1 out of 6, and I've had like it fully finished.
6? I think it's 5 points.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay.
My bad.
I mean, you didn't. Whenever I graded it, is.
Yeah, when we did it, it was bad, but I've had it like finished for like 2 weeks. I don't know if I told you or not.
I don't think you have. I'll look at it later.
I swear I have.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use constraints. I have drawn each of these square rectangles where I've used like the center type. I've put the center. That's the only one. I've put the center to deliberately align with the like origin. But that is it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use some constraints to get the desired behavior. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use a coincident constraint. What type of constraint? Yeah. And now that forces two things to be on top of each other. So if I use a coincident constraint to force this line to be on top of this line, and this line to be on top of this line, they'll be joined. I'm going to use a coincident constraint. I'm going to make this edge line up with this edge. So I'm going to click on this edge, and I'm going to click on this edge. Now, the other stuff is not the same. Doesn't have quite the same height or same width as what's below it. So I can get the height. That's a pretty easy thing to measure. 17.2. So dimensioning the height, 17.2. So you can see it's a little bit more narrow than the shape underneath. I'm also going to redo the entire width. The entire width, I'm getting something like 55.3. So to do the entire width, I click on this, drag my mouse, click over here, 55.3. The last thing I want to do is make each of these rectangles on the side the same width. So I can use an equal constraint to do that. So I got the equal constraint. So I'll make like this top line here equal to this one right here. And then I want to make them the same height. So I make this height right here equal to this height right here.
You're in the stream tab right now.
And then I can extrude.
So is he also on? Yeah. Yeah, that's good. I'll do this the second game. Now we go to slice. I want the equals.
And I can use the whole depth gauge to get the height.
Someone broke off. You can choose something. Each of this is lined up. So now all we gotta do is hit send. What's that? I don't know why, but that's the Automoblox.
A what? The Automoblox Car.
We're around 10.9, it looks like.
Yeah, little camera.
Baseball coming
I
up.
don't watch it. Yeah, good observation.
What is much better?
So we'll call this the smaller half because it's a little bit thinner.
Yeah.
Okay. Now what I'm going to do next is I'm going to do my fillets. So I'm going to go ballpark the size of those. Maybe 2.3 or something? 2.2?
Are you streaming this?
Yeah.
We're streaming yesterday.
Mm-hmm. There's also the whole thing from last year. I mean, I don't know how good it is as last year they did
Just
it.
a different stage. I think I went a different way. So
So I don't know if that's the exact same size. Seems to be a little bit smaller. Maybe just 2. So I'm going to just do the fillet. And I'm going to just change it to 2. And I'm going to fillet these 4 outer edges. And I'll call those smaller half outer fillets. And then what I'm going to do is I am going to do what I'm referring to earlier as the inner fillets, these right here. Something that might even be helpful, hypothetically, would have been to just do a single fillet. You can kind of see this in hindsight, right? If I had just filled that entire edge, that might have been easier. So what I can do is I can take my larger half inner fillets. I could go in there and just try and add, but I can't add something that doesn't exist yet. So how do we fix this? How do we fillet this? Yep, we can take this larger half inner fillet and we can just move it. And now suddenly you'll notice that it's extended all the way.
what?
Wait, Karen, what? I'll do stream right now. A small, what's the outline of red?
Why smaller half red?
Yeah.
Because it was based on a shape that would have been based on the fillets.
So you're fine.
Here, if I go to this, there would have been a fillet here normally, right?
Yeah.
So it says like there's a constraint or whatever, a horizontal constraint, so I can click and delete that.
So horizontal.
The one that was red, it came up automatically as red, right?
Yeah. I just want to click on it.
They just go away. I don't want configured. So basically I did a coincident constraint on a surface that would inevitably get broken up because of those fillets going around the corners. And do a coincident constraint to line this back up. And I'm done.
Where'd you put it?
Mhm.
Where'd you put the constraint?
I just lined this up with the top edge.
Like
So this edge of this rectangle, the top edge of the actual physical surface, right? Like the 2 lines are on top of each other right now. That's why I can't show you both of them.
you lined it up with which one?
I have no idea what you're saying.
Which one do you line it up with? Oh.
You delete this red thing, yes? So this can move. So you do a coincident constraint, you line this up with the existing edge, the shape. Yes?
Yes.
Are we good?
Oh my gosh.
That was all.
There seems to be a very, very small, so actually, first off, so these would no longer be the larger half inner fillets, they would just be the inner fillets. Now, what I can do is I can do these edges right here, like that edge right there. Those are very small roundings. Maybe 0.5 millimeter, even that. So I'm doing 0.5 millimeter fillet right there. Trying to select it. There, I got it. If you have an issue selecting something, you can always hover over and choose right click, and you can change select other, and it'll like let you select different things there. But regardless, I got my fillets there, and those I'm calling the smaller half inner fillets.
Yeah, you're.
That's most of the piece done. I still need to put the holes in. So I still need to put a rectangular hole in the back. So I'm going to sketch a rectangle on this. My thing lagged or something. That was weird. So I'm getting a height of 7.9.
Oh my god. Oh my god. How do you want? I can see. Wait, that's the intersections? Yes. Wait, one more.
And I'm getting a width of 40.7 or something very close to that. And that's a hole that I'm going to do a cutout for. So to do a cutout, remember over here, I'm going to change it from add to remove. And you'll use the bottom part of your calipers, the whole thing, to get the depth. Similarly, I'm going to go on the other side. I'm going to do my two squares. Now, you might have other shapes, diamonds, circles, whatever. But however you did them earlier is how you'll do it again today. I happened to do a snap to constraint that lined this corner up horizontally with this corner. Gonna get the dimensions of these. 11.6. There we go. And then I'm going to get a constraint on how far that is from the edge. 4.4. 4.4 again, maybe? I'm going to go 4.4. So 4.4 is how far this edge of the square is to this edge of the shape. Now these are squares. So their heights are equal to their widths. So I can go to the I'm going to make a bunch of stuff equal. So I'm going to make the top equal to the left side. And the top equal to the left side. And I am going to make something else. No. Nah. I'll just delete this. I'll just delete that one and do a mirror. I'm going to mirror.
How do you get it centered?
Do what center?
Like center it like right in between them, or does that not? Like the square.
You're going to have to help me understand what you're asking.
Like how do you put the squares right, like directly halfway between? Like the same distance from the.
There's different ways. I use the mirror feature, but you could also just dimension them again. You know what I'm saying? If there was a line connecting them or line segments, you might be able to use some constraints. But I actually just realized the mirror was probably the most efficient way, so I just use the mirror within the sketch. So now I can extrude. Oh, wrong click. That one right there. And then I'm removing material. So I'm going to click the Remove tab. And the depth, we're looking at 12.1 maybe. Yeah, 12.1 is good. I'm going to rename. Okay. So this will be the larger half rectangle. Same thing here. Larger half rectangle. And then I'm going to call this the smaller half squares. I'm pretty much done. I have the key parts of the shape. Now, if you look carefully, you'll notice that there's some clips on the sides. And if you look even more carefully, you'll notice that the part of the plastic underneath and in between the clips is actually sloped. So this surface right here, if you actually look at it carefully, you actually would notice that it's actually sloped. So like if I were to look at this dead on, right here, this seems a lot thicker than it does if I look at it here. And it's because this surface is sloped. So we could talk about doing that, and we might do that, but this is good enough for our purposes right now at least. We might come back and improve this later. Do we have any questions before we move on? Any questions at all? Okay, we're done with that piece.
Exactly. I feel right.